Let's give an example now to how we're going to establish a connection between two hosts across a network. So in this particular example, what we're going to do is we're going to show that host A is making a TCP connection over to host B across the interweb. So in this case, realize through this example, host A is trying to talk to host B across this network. So one of the key things here from a TCP perspective is that we need to establish a connection. Now, TCP does a three-step handshake in order to establish a connection between two hosts. That process looks like this. Host A is going to send a SYN request. The synchronization request, we create a random sequence number. In this case, our random sequence number is going to be sequence 100. And we send that message over to host B. Now, that's an unsolicited connection request. Oftentimes, if you have firewalls involved, this is where a firewall would step in and say, no, you can't make a request to these devices because it's a protected device behind a firewall. So if host A was hacker.com and host B was an inside protected host inside of your network, you probably wouldn't allow this synchronization request. But if it was the other way around, if somebody inside your network was trying to go out to hacker.com, well, maybe allow that, or maybe not. But in this case, we're making a SYN request, host A talking to host B. Now, host B responds back. Now, the response back is a SYN ACK. Now, the ACK part, we're acknowledging that host A wants to have a conversation with us. So that's where we have the acknowledgement. Now, the SYN request here is so that we can establish a bidirectional form of communication. Host B wants to be part of this conversation also. Host A told us that it wants to send us data, but host B also wants to send data back. So the process of creating the SYN ACK is allowing us to have a bidirectional communication between these two parties. But because we have a SYN request come into host A has to acknowledge it back. So the last response would be acknowledgement from host A's perspective back to host B. Now, once we've done this SYN ACK handshake here, now host A and host B can communicate, and they can do so in a bidirectional fashion. Notice a few things as far as the SYN request and ACK numbers involved here. So when B sends the ACK request, the SYN ACK back, notice the sequence number it creates. That's the SYN portion. The sequence number it creates was 300. When we do the establish part, when host A responds back, notice the acknowledgement number it sends. It's sending an acknowledgement value of 301. Now, that's what that really is it's a forward acknowledgement. So what we're telling host B and host A's perspective here with that acknowledgement is that the next packet we expect to get from B, the next sequence number we expect, is 301. So the idea of forward acknowledgement's been established right in the middle of the handshake here, with the ACK packet being one more than the sequence that we just received. TCP also has a form of flow control with respect to the data flow and issues that we're seeing here in the slide. So as time goes on, we're sending data from host A to host B. Host B ends up, with a lot of connections coming from a lot of different sources. So it sends a message back to host A saying, hey, my buffer's full. I've got too much data coming in. Please slow down your request because I simply can't handle as much data as being sent. Once the buffer is ready to be sent, we can send a resume request from host B back over to host A, and host A can continue sending data. So the idea of being able to stop inbound data flows and slow them down is a useful function of what TCP is able to do.